Because I don't think anyone can argue Caitlin Clark has changed the game. She changed it in college and in the WNBA. We know she broke all those records in college. But what was it about Caitlin that has just garnered so much attention and changed things the way that she has?
You know, Rhiannon, obviously she's a basketball player, clearly, as you can see. But she's also an entertainer.
Why would a professional sports league try to sabotage its own biggest star? That is the damning question at the heart of a new tell-all book about Caitlin Clark that is tearing the WNBA apart. The book, now a #1 bestseller, exposes how a toxic mix of front office incompetence and on-court jealousy created a hostile environment for the one player single-handedly saving their league. This wasn't just rookie hazing or growing pains. The evidence laid out is a stunning indictment of an establishment that seemed resentful of its own savior, and the details are even worse than you can imagine.
And it seems like every story or excerpt or interview that Christine does turns up the heat a little bit more on what Caitlin Clark's first year in the WNBA looked like and the lack of preparation from the league level to the players to, even logistically. This league was not ready for this phenomenon to take over.
The most damning proof of the WNBA's cluelessness came from one disastrous phone call. The day after Clark declared for the draft, author Christine Brennan contacted a top league official, trying to gauge if they understood the cultural hurricane that was heading straight for them. The official's response was breathtaking in its naivety. They confidently stated that Clark's arrival would likely be the biggest thing to happen to the league since Maya Moore. Maya Moore.
This league is full of drama. Absolute drama. Now, we knew when Christine Brennan, the journalist who wrote the upcoming Caitlin Clark book, the stories emerging from this book is going to light the league on fire. I mean, seriously. We got an altercation between Brennan and Dejanay Carrington. It doesn't even have to do with the eye gouge, which we know Dejanay flipped her wig off over.
While Moore is undeniably an all-time great, a champion, and a legend in her own right, comparing her arrival to the Clark phenomenon was like comparing a campfire to a supernova. Clark wasn't just a talented basketball player, she was a cultural engine who was single-handedly breaking college basketball viewership records, drawing in millions of fans who had never watched a women's game before.
Christine spoke with somebody from the W who she did not name, and she asked that person, do you know how big this is going to be? And that person responded, yeah, this should be the biggest thing since Maya Moore. Now, Maya Moore is an all-time great player. Maya Moore has never sniffed what Caitlin Clark has meant to the profile of women's basketball. And Christine Brennan was shocked that they would compare it to that.
The WNBA was looking at a generational talent and seeing just another top draft pick. That one comment exposed the core of the problem. The league's leadership was asleep at the wheel, utterly oblivious to the revolution they were about to face. But their miscalculation wasn't just a bad opinion, it was about to manifest in cold, hard numbers that would become a legitimate threat to the league's old guard.
Caitlin Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge. And to then see this negativity, like why? And what should have been done? I look seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it at Iowa. You see these TV ratings. And then what?
Almost immediately, the Clark effect began to warp the league's entire economic reality. The numbers became so big, so undeniable, that they could no longer be ignored. Teams playing in small, 4,000-seat arenas were suddenly facing unprecedented demand. The Washington Mystics were forced to move their home game against Clark's Indiana Fever from their usual venue to the 20,000-seat Capital One Arena, home of the NBA's Wizards. The Las Vegas Aces, the reigning champions, did the same, shifting their matchup to the massive T-Mobile Arena.
People are doing a really good job promoting it for. I mean, for the folks who are against the Brennan notion or the promotion, they surely are doing a lot of promoting for her. I mean, Dejanay Carrington.
Fans weren't just coming from down the street. They were flying in from Mexico, Hawaii, and countries across the globe, all wearing Clark jerseys. But the most terrifying proof of the league's dependency came when Clark was injured. The moment she was sidelined, the entire WNBA ecosystem shuddered. Viewership for Fever games plummeted by a shocking 53%. Ticket prices, which had skyrocketed, crashed by nearly half overnight, and even at a discount, arenas suddenly looked empty again. The league was forced to confront a brutal truth. They hadn't built a popular league, they had one popular player. While the front office was happily counting Clark's money, many veteran players seemed intent on punishing her for it on the court.
And this person said, well, this is probably the biggest thing that happened in the WNBA since Maya Moore. And Maya Moore is a great basketball player and deserved to have the kind of attention that Caitlin Clark is getting, but never got it. The notion that the WNBA wasn't ready for this, couldn't believe that this could happen, I think it set in motion so many of the issues and the conversations we've had about the jealousy and the concern that we see from some of the players, the cheap shot hits, Kennedy Carter last year and Marina Mabry this year, Dana, that it just was the sense that this incredible thing is happening to the WNBA and the league seems completely, utterly unprepared for it.
The welcome Caitlin Clark received in the WNBA was not with open arms, but with hard shoulders and cheap shots. The physical intimidation she faced was relentless and impossible to ignore. Kennedy Carter's infamous blindside shoulder check wasn't just a hard foul in the heat of the moment, it was a message delivered away from the ball with clear intent. The aggressive plays from others, like Marina Mabry, were part of a disturbing pattern. The league that plastered Clark's face on every promotional poster and billboard was simultaneously failing to protect her between the lines.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Views from the Court. This is GT. Look, I just met a young fan right here who traveled over 852 miles in CCC. We gonna make sure you get this box checked off, all right? So y'all stay locked in, all right? Let's get it. I love you.
The hypocrisy was so blatant that it drew criticism from legends in other sports. Tennis icon Chris Evert publicly blasted the WNBA, highlighting the obvious mean girls dynamic and questioning why the league was allowing its biggest asset to be targeted. The optics were disastrous. It became so bad that Clark's own teammate Sophie Cunningham had to become her unofficial on-court protector, stepping in to defend her when the referees and the league would not. This failure to protect their star would only be eclipsed by an even more baffling decision made on the world stage.
We're going on vacation to Las Vegas, and we are going to go see Caitlin Clark at the Indiana Fever against the Aces.
No way! We already have tickets. Really? Really?
Thank you. Thank you.
Caitlin Clark, once in a lifetime opportunity.
Thank you, guys.
The decision to leave Caitlin Clark off the 2024 Olympic basketball team was a public relations catastrophe of epic proportions. The selection committee's official justification was that they were worried about how Clark's massive fan base would react online if she didn't get much playing time. It was a cowardly and baffling excuse that the public saw right through. The move was widely perceived as a blatant snub, an act of gatekeeping by a veteran establishment that didn't want to share the spotlight. The decision backfired spectacularly. The U.S. women's gold medal game against France, which should have been a ratings bonanza with Clark, instead drew the worst viewership for a final in over 15 years. The women's soccer final, by comparison, drew nearly 2 million more viewers.
All right, black and white sports supporters, let's talk about Dejanay Carrington because she's angry. Dejanay's mad. That's right, she's mad about Christine Brennan's book and some of the stories that are emerging from said book. Now, what's interesting about what it is that Dejanay's saying here is you do realize there were witnesses to said story that came out. And if you actually pulled the journalist in the court, they're going to bring those witnesses in and be like, she walked in and this is exactly what happened. And the judge is going to look over at you and go,
The move was so monumentally foolish that the Washington Post named it one of the worst sports decisions of 2024. The ultimate humiliation came weeks later when selection committee head Dawn Staley admitted on national television that if they had to do it all over again, Clark would be in really high consideration for the team, acknowledging she was playing head and shoulders above many of the players who were chosen. It was a shocking admission of a billion-dollar mistake, driven by fear and jealousy.
Olympics ended in Paris, came back, went to Indy, and I was with the Fever every step of the way.
Wow.
I got a chance to ask her 40 to 50 questions. Everything was, nothing was off limits. And she is, as I say in the book, she's 22 going on 40 or 50. Everything
you can
thrown
tell.
at her. I asked her about her like of the Taylor Swift post about Kamala Harris, endorsing Kamala Harris. Would she be endorsing her? You know, you could ask those kinds of questions. Most athletes, as you know, aren't happy when you ask those questions. She looks you in the eye. She gives you long answers. She's direct. She's also very, very funny. And everything was thrown at her. And she handled it in a beautiful way. I say this to a lot.
At the heart of all this tension is a power dynamic that makes the WNBA and its veterans deeply uncomfortable. Caitlin Clark earns a salary of just $76,000 a year from the Indiana Fever. It's a respectable figure, but it's dwarfed by her off-court earnings. Her endorsement deals with global giants like Nike, Gatorade, Wilson, and State Farm are estimated to be worth a staggering $40 million annually. This financial reality changes everything. Clark doesn't need the WNBA to be a global superstar or to be financially secure. She already is. The WNBA, on the other hand, desperately needs her.
This is a perfect textbook example of mean girls. Woman on woman, indirect violence. Snubbing a woman who's excellent simply because she got honored. This is an unbelievable example of the ways in which when a woman is excellent or ambitious, other women go silent. Or we start to ask the question, is she likable? That's not relevant. This isn't about likability. This is about whether or not she's excellent. So, sports writers and the public voter is one of the best point guards in the country. Other women, 9th best. So the men are scratching their heads. This is why we need ampleship. Women supporting other women in front of witnesses because they're excellent.
Her presence is the primary driver of their newfound mainstream relevance, their record-shattering attendance figures, and the lucrative new television deals on the horizon. This incredible imbalance of power has created a tense, fragile situation where the league's biggest star is also its least controllable. She holds all the cards, and the league knows that her financial independence gives her leverage no WNBA player has ever had before. And that leverage has led to quiet whispers about the most explosive possibility of all.
Here in Iowa, we were the first to realize Caitlin's pull on fans. When do you think the WNBA fully realized what it had?
Publicly, I'm not sure that they really have. They certainly know, they have to know, Keith, but in terms of the comments, in terms of the way the commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, who I've known and I like, the way she has trouble talking about Caitlin Clark, or if she's asked about Caitlin, then she will say, well, Caitlin and Angel. Well, she wasn't asked about Angel, she was asked about Caitlin.
Christine Brennan's book and subsequent interviews have brought a truly radical idea into the mainstream conversation. What if Caitlin Clark just started her own league? At first, it sounds like a fantasy, but the more you look at it, the more plausible it becomes. Her $28 million deal with Nike isn't just an endorsement, it's a partnership with the most powerful sports marketing machine on the planet.
U.S. women's basketball was so worried about people's reactions to Clark's playing time, so concerned about critical posts on X and Facebook and the like, that they didn't want to deal with any of it. That is honestly, it's not fair to her.
Well, it is, and I've covered the Olympics for a long time, actually since the '84 LA Games, and I've never seen a worse team selection decision ever. Here you've got this person who's not only playing great at that point, her statistics were better than some of the players they did put on the Olympic team.
Add in her deals with Gatorade and Wilson, and you have a coalition of corporate titans with the capital, infrastructure, and global reach to build a new league from the ground up with Clark as its centerpiece. They could secure arenas, lock in a massive television contract, and attract other top players with the promise of higher salaries and greater exposure. The Nike Clark League isn't just a hypothetical threat. It's the WNBA's worst nightmare. It represents the ultimate consequence of their mismanagement, not just losing their biggest star, but being rendered obsolete by her.
Left and started her own league because of the way she's been treated. Would that work? What do you think?
It's interesting. I thought of that too. Nike loves her. Nike, she's got Wilson, obviously. She's got Gatorade. I mean, even though the salary's, what, $76,000 for a rookie, it's more this year now. You know, she's making, what is she, $28 million just from Nike alone, according to Wall Street. So she's at, you know, $40 million, whatever. Okay, so fine. So she's doing great. And if Nike said, we're going to make the Nike Clark League,
right?
You know, it takes a few years to get the arenas and whatever. But you know, the TV contract, I mean, it's Caitlin.
In the end, Christine Brennan's bestseller didn't create a crisis. It simply held up a mirror to a crisis that was already raging. Caitlin Clark's arrival was a winning lottery ticket, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to elevate women's basketball into the stratosphere of mainstream sports. Instead, the league fumbled it at every turn. They were unprepared for her fame, unwilling to protect her on the court, and seemingly resentful of the very attention she brought. The book simply pulled back the curtain and showed the world the ugly mix of jealousy, insecurity, and incompetence that was festering behind the scenes. The question that remains is not whether the league can silence the controversy, but whether it can survive the truth. Has the Caitlin Clark phenomenon finally exposed a league too broken and too proud to fix itself before its biggest star decides she no longer needs it?